G'day guys, welcome back to Motorheads Hunting and Outdoors. I'd like to apologise to some of my long-term followers of the channel. The last 6 months I've had a few issues with some health issues. I had to have my appendix taken out and I spent a couple of weeks stints in hospital where they couldn't diagnose what it was. So I've had four stints in hospital overall over the last 6 months and had a fairly lengthy recovery period in between. So I haven't been able to do any content on the channel, so I apologise to my long-term viewers and followers. But I'm going to give you basically 3 videos into one this time around. I'm going to finally show you how to turn to a camo paint job on your rifle. Now this is the general pattern that I normally do with fern, and then I just recently done a mate of mine's rifle with a different style of pattern, and I videoed that, so I'll tack that on to the end of this video. It'll probably be a little bit long-winded video, as most of mine are, as most of you long-term followers know. But you know, I like to go into depth and cover everything, as you guys that follow the channel already know. So we'll go through and I'll show you basically how I go step by step, and then the other video will also be a step by step of the same process, just with a different pattern and what we use to try and get the effect. The other video I'll have on top of that again is that same rifle. Before I done the camo paint job on it, I done a how-to bedding video, and it was a Weatherby Vanguard Mark II. So for you guys who've got a Weatherby Vanguard Mark II, you want to look on how to turn to a bedding video on that style of rifle. I'll leave the links in the description for that as well, and you can suss that as well. So anyway, to start off with, guys, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to clean the rifle. So I've just got some acetone. So just some acetone in a chucks cloth, and all we're basically going to do is just go over the entire rifle with the acetone, or you could use metho. Basically anything just to get rid of the grease and oil and you know, powder solvent and all your different solvent and whatnot from cleaning and all the rest of it. So we'll chuck a bit of this acetone on the chucks cloth, and you want to make sure you give it a really good wipe over. You don't want any silicone or grease from your hands or any of that left on the firearm. So we'll just give that a quick going over, and I'll do that now. Okay guys, so now that you've cleaned it all off with acetone or whatever it is you're going to use to clean your firearm down, the next thing you're going to have to go ahead and do is you're going to have to try to get some masking tape and mask up either end of your scope, so your lenses don't get any paint or anything on them. Now it's up to you entirely. You can also mask off around where your power settings are, or if you've got a target style turret, you know, one of those style scopes, you know, you can mask up those marks with a little bit of masking tape to cover them and peel them off when you're done, so you can still see them. Being that this is a 6 power and it never really moves off 6 power, it's a 4 to 6, but it never really moves off 6 power. I'm not really worried about it. You know, I know where the maximum magnification is. The other thing you're going to need is something to turn around to block the muzzle end of the firearm. And this, as per all of my videos, there's never any ammunition anywhere near the firearm, even though the bolt is closed. The breech is clear. You just have to take my word for that. So yeah, I use an earplug. Basically, just bung an earplug down in through the muzzle. Let that fill up that, just to stop any paint from getting down into your rifling and that sort of area. And once you got that, then guys, you can just set the rifle on your. I like to use a bit of cardboard. And the way to do it is to take your lightest colour. If you want a predominantly lighter coloured camo job, you want to start out with your lightest colour first and work your way up to your darkest colour. If you want a more of a darker camo job, start from your darkest and work to your lightest, and that will give you your a more of a darker camo job. So basically what we're going to do is the first coat is going to be the lightest colour, and with that, this is going to be the one that you're going to use the most. You should get 2 rifles out of one of these tins. With the other colours, you should get 3 to 4 rifles out of, because they're just your follow-up coats and you're not putting as much on. With this, because you're pretty much covering the whole entire rifle, you use about a half a can per rifle. So we'll just start spraying this on, get a bit of cover. I'll have to break out another tin here because this one's just about empty. But you can generally see, you just basically need to cover the entire rifle in the lightest colour first. And just normally just give it a light dust to start off with for the first coat, let it stick, and then you can do another coat after that. Do one side at a time, let the first side fully dry, Then turn the rifle over, and this stuff will fully dry to where you can touch it and move it in about 10-15 minutes if it's a sort of warmer weather. If you're in the middle of winter, it might take you half an hour to an hour to let it settle to before you can touch it and move it around and do what you need to do. But you know, in the summer weather, you can tend to move it around after about 10 to 15 minutes of drying. So we'll just use up what's left of that tin. That tin's had it. We'll just grab another tin. I'll give this one a bit of a shake up. Alright, let's keep plenty of this around. And the paint I'll use is Krylon camouflage paint. I'll leave a link in the description. If you're from Australia, there's only a couple of places in Australia where you can buy the Krylon paint. Obviously, for you guys in the States and overseas, you can get it at just about any Walmart or second buddy general store. But for us in Australia, there's only a couple of places that I know of where you can order this paint. I'll leave a link in the description on where you can order it. And it'll come up with the full range of paints and also the clear coat that I use to clear coat as well, which is a matte finish clear coat. And that just gives it a little bit more durability. Okay, now we can just go ahead and finish covering this part of the rifle. Now, being that this is a pump action, I'll have to let it dry, slide the pump back, and finish off doing the front half of the of where the slide is as well, so it's covered, so that when the action is open, you know, you don't have that big area of blackness where you haven't got any paint. So we'll go through and do that as well. But for now, we'll give this side a good coat. I'll let it dry. I'll flip it over and I'll do the other side. I won't worry about showing the painting of the other side. I'll just paint the entire rifle first, and then I'll come back when we're going to go on to the next process. So that's pretty much it, guys. Like I say, for more of a lighter colour camo, start with your lightest colour first, working towards your darkest. For a darker, obviously start at your darkest, working towards your lightest. Alright, I'll be back in a few minutes, and we'll show you the first layer that we're going to put down of using a fern. And I just use a common fern that's found in most sort of areas, you know, dense areas around where I hunt. You know, and it really gives one of the best looking camo jobs too. It turns out really nice. So I'll let that dry, we'll flip it over, do the other side, and we'll come back and I'll show you the next part. Alright guys, so you've painted your lightest base colour. So I like to get a few different size bits of fern. You know, your main bigger pieces are going to obviously cover things like that on your stock. And then, you know, I'll go more the smaller stuff to cover, you know, over the barrel and, you know, little hand grip bits and pieces like that, and, you know, scope and those sort of areas. So we'll just orientate it. I like to orientate it sort of normally the length of the stock in orientation to start off with. So we'll start off with, we'll go this way up through the hand grip of the stock and that sort of thing, and then we'll go on through here, sort of on a bit of an angle. And again, see those smaller bits just work out great across those other areas. That one over, actually, it's going to sit a lot better that way. And then obviously your smaller piece, you can sit along the end of your barrel. So we'll just okay. So you start with your next colour. Your next colour is actually a lighter colour. I picked out the wrong colour, but it's not really going to matter too much. But then we're basically just going to give it that a light dusting over the top to start off with. And then just go a little bit heavier as you go. Alright, now we're going to let that sit for a little bit until that dries. And then once that dries, I tend to turn around and I take my fern and flip it back the other orientation back the other direction for the second coat, for the next colour up. Once I've done that, then I'll turn and start to layer more of my fern on and thicken it up. Basically, in the end, you want a hell of a lot more fern covering the entire rifle for when you go to your darker colour. Otherwise, a lot more of that black is going to shine through. And if you want more of a lighter colour, then you definitely want to get a lot more coverage with your fern to turn it so that you don't have as much black in total when you do it. So I'll just pause it now. I'll wait until that dries, and then I'll show you that flipping it over and doing that way, and you'll sort of get an idea of how the pattern is starting to form. So anyway, we'll wait a minute. We'll do that, and we'll start it up again. Okay, guys, so that's dried. I've now pulled that off, so you can now start to sort of get an idea on the orientation of the pattern. I'll just bring the camera over, and you can get a bit of an orientation on how the pattern's starting to come out already. So we'll just set that back there, and then what I normally do is, because I've layered it in that fashion originally, I'll now turn around and layer it back the other orientation. So we'll go ahead now and go through the other orientation. We'll just cover over a bit more of that where we got it solid last time round, and just change it up just slightly. This time we'll go down through like this. Again, sort of just cover over that bit like that, and we'll change up and change it the other way around, so we get a little bit more of that orientation. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our next colour up. That one away. Now next darkest colour is going to be more of our OD green. So just give that a bit of a shake up. Pull that across there a little bit more, just to give that a bit more covering through there, sort of through there. And this coat is going to be more, you know, it's going to sort of give it a fading effect sort of thing when you put it through. So now this fern that's now here will now stay there. We won't lift that fern off. We'll start to add more fern in on a crisscross angle back another direction, but I'll show you that in a moment. We'll get this painted up through here first, and then I'll show you how we're going to go from there. And you only do one side at a time, let it fully dry, turn it over and do the other side. You're not going to, you know, if you follow that sort of way of doing the pattern on both sides, it should turn out pretty close. It's not always going to be exactly identical, but you know, it's the idea of camo anyway is just to break up the main colours, so that, you know, it's not one main colour anyway. So I've done quite a few this way, and they always seem to turn out very nice. So I've had quite a few people compliment the paint job, and you know, usually ask where I've got it, where I've had it done, or you know, whether they can buy the rifle like that way. A lot of people would tend to want to get the same thing done to their own rifles. So anyway, so we'll start with the next colour. Because it's a pretty sort of thick fern, you tend to got to give it a little bit of a half decent coat when you do, you know, put it on a bit thicker, just so you get that pattern start to show. And that rotten sod's turned around and moved on me, but that's the nature of it. With the fern, it tends to want to move around a bit, but it's one of those things. So again, we're going to let that dry, and then once that's dried, guys, I'll then go ahead and turn around and start to crisscross the other pattern over the top, and I'll show you that in a moment. I'll let that dry again, and I'll come back in a moment and show that part of the process. All right, guys, so that's now dried. So we're going to come in with our a bit more of our fern again, and we're going to crisscross across the other manner of how we've already gone. So we're just going to go, you know, roughly splay it out in a different orientation, sort of, you know, from coming from the other direction. And we're just going to keep doing this, you know, crisscrossing over more and more as we go into the darker colours. and you'll see the pattern really start to emerge when we start to take this this fern off. Alright, so we've got that pretty well laid out there, how we want it. Might try and put it down over there a bit more. Now we'll take our darker colour again that we've got. So you might put a small piece through over that just to break that up a little bit. And we'll go through again with our darker colour now, which is more like a grey discolour. Again, as you put the thicker layers of fern on, you're going to have to really flog the paint in to get it to go in between the fingers of the fern to get that effect to show through. But like I say, because you don't want it too dark, you want to just keep layering fern on. So we'll just Righto. So again now guys, we're going to try and let that sit, and then once that's dried, we're going to start throwing some more fern in here and there as we start to get into the darker colours. Actually, you might even just turn around and take that off and reorientate that again back the other direction, and then we'll do the brown, and then we'll put a lot thicker coat over for the final coat. So alright, we'll come back and I'll show you that part again when we get to that. Okay guys, so that's dried. So like I said before, we're just going to lift that up. We're going to change the orientation of that back the other direction. Again, through the other direction. Again, through there. Through there. And I'm going to add a few more pieces in around the handle of the stock in here, just to cover up, because like I said, that darker colour will come through predominantly a fair amount when you go to put the darker colour in. So we'll just going to add a little bit more through that area, just to cover that up a bit more. And again, you know, just through areas around where you've got a lot of that darker colour starting to predominantly come through, we're going to throw a little bit more in around there, a little bit more around the side, and basically around the back here through here, because as I said, that the darker colour will predominantly come through a lot more. So we definitely want you know, less of that darker colour and more of that lighter colour is the idea we're going for with this particular spray job. So we lay through a bit more on over the scope area. Like I say, this darker colour will definitely show through a lot more, and you know, if you want it a bit darker as well, you can sort of, you know, put a little bit less on, and it will give you more of that darker finish in the end. But we want more of that lighter colour, so from here on in, we're just going to add more and more fern. Again, we're going to give it a good dosing pretty heavily, because you've got an extra lot of layer of fern there, so we want a pretty sort of heavy coating now. Again, like we did before. And that sometimes will happen, you'll find some of that fern will move. Sometimes you just have to hold it in place. It will move on you, but that's just part of the fun of doing this. Put that back out of the top again. Like I I said, you just really flog that on nice and thick. And then we'll let that dry again, and then we'll go into our last colour, which will be the black. So again, once we go into the black, I'll be putting more fern across again, just crisscrossing over what's there, or just, you know, just manipulating and moving it around a bit more, and just adding a little bit more of this fern. We've only got a little bit more left. We've used up a fair whack of it, but you know, that's all part of it. So we'll just move a bit of that around and orientate it a little bit differently as well, allow it to flick through into the pattern that we've already got going there. So again, I'll let that dry, and we'll go into the black. I won't show the process of when I'm doing the other side, because it's basically the same as doing this side. So when that last layer is done and dried, I'll peel it all off, and I'll show you the pattern that you end up with in the very end. So alright guys, we'll be back again shortly. I'll show you that. So we've done that last colour. I've pulled all the fern off. We're going to reorientate it again a different way. This time around, we're going to take that one off the barrel there. Actually, I might reorientate that back the other direction. And here's where you're really going to start flogging your fern on to cover up as much of that as possible, because you want to keep that. You don't want as much of that black definitely shining through. You want to keep that pretty well covered, because the black will tend to make it a lot darker. So we'll just go through, make sure we give that a good covering. Sit that way. Like I said, you really want to make sure that you get as much over this as possible, because that black will really cover so much of it. It's not funny, and you want as much of the lighter colour in there as you can. We'll just pull that across here. Sit that way for me. Alright, now we'll go through and we'll flog our black on. The black, you'll actually have to flog on a hell of a lot more than you have before. You'll notice when we go through and finally peel all this off, you'll have a really nice camo pattern. Bit of a pain in the neck when it moves around sometimes, but That's just the way it goes when you're just got it sitting on there lightly. Sort of what happens. Just put that back up there again. Piece. A bit of a pain in the neck. Doesn't want to really stay there that well, but it's all part and parcel. Right guys, so again I'm just going to let that sit, let that dry, and then I'll come back and we'll slowly peel it all off, and I'll show you what the pattern's left with in the end. But from what I've seen, just by removing those couple of layers and seeing what's through there so far, it's going to turn out really nice. It's probably going to be one of the best turned out one I've done so far, just because the rifle's so much flatter. It's so easier. If you've got more of a rounded stock, and you know it doesn't sort of sit as flat, it makes it a lot harder to get that fern to stay there, and you get a few bit of cross ghosting effect, you know, with some of it. But it's one of those things that no matter how it turns out, it'll never always turn out exactly the way you expect it to turn out, but it usually turns out pretty well. You'll always end up pretty well happy with the end result. You know, it'll do the job. But after doing a few and sort of playing around with, you know, orientating the fern and stuff like that over the last few that I've done, I find this is sort of the best result you get from doing it this way, you know, and putting it on thicker. But anyway, so we'll let that dry, come back and I'll unravel it all, and we'll have a look at the whole entire pattern. Alright guys, we'll catch you then. Okay guys, well it's now dry, so it's time to start taking the layers of fern off. So we'll start with the very top layer first. Start peeling that away. Alright guys, so there we have it. That's the pattern we've ended up with. As you can see, that's turned out really nice. The only thing to do now is to flip it over, do the same thing on the other side, and then once we've done the same thing on the other side, we can then turn around and go ahead and hit it with a clear coat, give it a final clear coat, and then it's good to go. So I'll just lift it up and I'll show you there. That's it, pretty much fully done. So that turned out really nice. That's probably one of the best ones I've done so far, bar none. So we'll just let that harden a little bit more. We'll flip it over, do the exact same thing on the other side, and then we'll turn around and we'll clear coat it all, and it'll be all good to go. So anyway guys, hope you liked the video. I know it's been a long time coming. I said quite a while ago that I would go through and I'd show you this process. So, you know, like I said, you're going to get a 2-for-1. Not only you'll see how I try and do the fern spray job, also the mate's Vanguard, Weatherby Vanguard that I try and did with a totally different style of pattern. I'll tack that video on the top of this one, or I'll try and leave a link in the description of this video to that one as well. That way you get 2-for-1. You can see the two different styles, and then also again that third video with the bedding job on the Weatherby Vanguard. So, all right guys. So again, sorry for being so long with for those followers that follow my channel quite a fair bit. If you're watching this for the first time and you want to follow my channel, to keep update with what's going on and what's happening on the channel, You can, if you go to my main page, you can click on my link to both my Facebook page and my Twitter page, where both I try and post quite often on a weekly basis what I'm going to do in an upcoming video and that sort of thing, so you'll get a gist on what I'm going to do before I release a video. Generally, when I release a video, if you're not subscribed but you are a member of the Facebook page, the moment I've uploaded a video, I also post it on both my Twitter and my Facebook as well. So follow along there. Don't forget to turn and give it a thumbs up, like, favourite it, share it with your friends as well on social media, and you know, and see what they think. They might want to turn and do the same thing. So anyway, guys, as always, safe and happy hunting, and have a good one.